Unfortunately, in our convoy, we started out with 1,500 people. Only 300 survived. I was very sick, couldn't hold down food. My mother, at the risk of her own life, at night would climb up on a cherry tree. Everything on the lower part was already eaten up. To take twigs and branches to make tea for me. The people in our stall told her, "Why do you torture the poor child? Just let him die in peace." She wouldn't have it, and eventually I grew strong enough to help food down and work things out. The winter of 41 to 42 was one of the harshest winters in Ukraine. The snow was so high that we could build like a tunnel without having to build an igloo over it. In the morning, the undertakers would come around to see who had perished during the night. The ground was too frozen to bury people. In our religion, you're supposed to be with a deceased person under such time that they are buried. Under those horrible conditions, they observed that. They found one of the stalls, the barn, made it like a makeshift morgue, and somebody was always there with the deceased people. They tried their best to keep the children's minds off the atrocities going on around us. My stepfather's brother-in-law was a cantor. That's the person that sings our prayers. Allegedly, they have good voices. He formed a children's choir just to take their mind away from what's going on. People that were not used to hardships were dying right and left. With the little bit that we have, they formed an orphanage to help the people survive. And ladies and gentlemen, remember I told you to pack only what you can carry? Education was so important. People actually brought books. We didn't escape from education. We didn't escape from homework. I remember having a pencil so small I was practically writing with my fingers. But we had to do our work. There were the older women that couldn't work the fields. And if you think I have long ears, that's because they pulled my ears every time I didn't do the work right. Under these horrible conditions, ladies and gentlemen, we actually had a wedding. The groom didn't have a shirt, but he had a tie, elegant. I remember some Nazi soldiers came to inspect the camp. They gave me a piece of chocolate. It's like giving you a piece of gold. However, everything that we had, I had to share with my cousin. So I had to wait till mother comes home from work to be sure she divides it exactly in half so we can share it. She had to throw it away because it could have been poison. They were poisoning food, they were booby-trapping toy, they were doing everything imaginable to destroy people. But the human spirit survives, and it's amazing how much you can endure. The Nazis, unfortunately, were very good in tricking people. For instance, there are some pictures there that perhaps if you have time at the end to look. There was a model camp in the Czech Republic called Tereznik or Theresienstadt for German. That was a model camp. They had beautiful bunks to sleep in. They had, like in a dormitory, a lot of sinks to wash up and so forth. So when the the Red Cross wanted to inspect the camp, they said, sure, come and look at it. You might have seen the uniforms that they wore in the destruction camps, the extermination camps, like the pajamas with stripes. Theresienstadt, they were wearing their own clothes. They even went as far as allowing the people to put on a play to be seen by the Red Cross, in which they were making fun of Hitler. The part of Hitler was played by a young boy. There were two boys competing for the role. The one that didn't get it was actually lucky, because as soon as the Red Cross left, they killed everybody that was in that play. They had set up makeshift, like arrival rooms in front of the extermination camps, that you thought that you're coming in to a pleasant situation. And their slogan was Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. Nobody realizes it makes you free of your life. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip a little bit to my return trip. In 1945, young partisans came into the camp and they said, "You're free to go." Go where? We didn't have a country at that time. Romania didn't want us back. Russia didn't want us back. Germans certainly didn't want us back. So we started walking by, same way, working in each little town, getting some strength, till the international community decided that we should be allowed to be repatriated, returned to the country from where we left. So we eventually worked our way back to Romania. I remember this incident. We looked when he came back in my grandfather's bombed out house. Part of it was still alive, was still up, ready to occupy. There was a beautiful park across the street. And being 7.5 years old, I was spending time in the park. I saw this cute little dog. So definitely I must have a dog. I followed the dog, and he walked over in the lake. It was partially frozen. They made it okay, but when I got there, I fell in. Fortunately, they rescued me. They brought me back to my grandfather's home, and that's the first time I had a drink of wine. I still do it today, but without falling in the lake. And it's interesting how people tend to forgive. Towards the end of the war, we were living with another family in a small little abandoned house. As the Nazis were retreating, one stormy night, we heard somebody knocking on our door. 3 Nazi officers, they pulled off all their insignias and everything. They were trying to look like soldiers. Asked if they could spend the night because it was very cold and freezing outside. People consulted with each other, and they decided it's only a human thing to do to let somebody come in and not be warm. Well, one of the soldiers had a little bit too much to drink, and he was making all kind of derogatory remarks about Jews. The other 2 guys took him outside. When he came back, he was a changed person. Very polite, very nice. And my aunt noticed one of the soldiers had a wedding band. She asked him if he heard from his wife. He started to cry. He just found out that she was killed during the bombing in Berlin. But coming back to Romania, it was like going, you say it, from the frying pan into the fire, because Romania became a communist country. Persecution and anti-Semitism was not quite as overt, it was more covert, but it was still there. I could not go to a good school originally. They still had schools where they were practicing like in the German language, Hungarian language, and so forth. Eventually that was eliminated, and I went to a very good high school. However, I couldn't get into college because I had relatives in the United States, I had relatives in Israel. I was